Guys, all right.
Start now.
So okay, I'll get started. All right, guys, my name is Danny K. I'm an alcoholic. First and foremost, before I get started with my story, I would like to thank you guys for reaching out and give me the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. Also, I had emailed yesterday. My topic is identification, but what I'm gonna do is I'll just give my story, my experience, strength, and hope, and as I go on, I'll talk about how identification uh, throughout my story has really saved my life. Me being able to identify with other alcoholics and other addicts, and how that got me to open up and really save my life. And when I say open up, I mean exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to open up. I'm going to share with you guys my story, what got me here, what I do now, all that good stuff. Okay, so like I said, my name is Danny. I live in Queens, New York. I live in a predominantly Irish Catholic neighborhood where drinking is very prevalent. It's almost like a way of life. And that has absolutely nothing to do with why I'm an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic, number one, I believe, because I was born this way. Born this way, meaning my body is different, meaning that once I take one, I have to have two. Right? So that's what I mean by the physical aspect of things. And then also the mental. I have a mind that tells me that I don't have a problem, and my mind never shuts off. It keeps racing. And growing up, I was the oldest of six. My father was a New York City fireman. My mother worked in finance. I had the perfect upbringing. I was the oldest of six kids. We had a house. I played sports. I went to school. I was given everything. I had absolutely no trauma in my life. Everything was good as a child. And yet alcoholism was still very prevalent in my life, meaning it ruined my life. Alcohol ruined my life, and my upbringing had absolutely nothing to do with it. I had a perfect upbringing. And before I go, all right, so I'll stop there so you can translate.
Thank you. Perfect. That was perfect. Yeah. సో ఆయన పేరు డానియల్ కే అండి, డానీ కే. ఆయన న్యూయార్క్ నగరం నుంచి అక్కడే పుట్టి పెరిగారు. ఆయన ఏంటంటే ఇక్కడ ఐరిష్ కమ్యూనిటీలో ఉండేవారు ఆయన. సో దాంట్లో బాగా తాగుడు ఎక్కువగా ఉంటుంది ఆయన ఉండే ప్రదేశంలో కూడా. కానీ దానివల్ల నేను తాగుబోతు అవ్వలేదు అంటున్నారు. నేను తాగుబోతు ఎందుకయ్యాను అంటే ఒక డ్రింక్ నాకు సరిపోదు. ఒక డ్రింక్ తాగితే నాకు సరిపోదు, ఇంకా కావాలి అంటే. తాగుడిని పూర్తిగా వదిలేయలేను, ఎందుకంటే నా బుర్ర, నా మైండ్ ఎప్పుడు చెప్తూ ఉంటది, ఏం పర్లేదు, ఈసారి వేరేగా ఉంటది, ఈసారి వేరేగా ఉంటది. సో అందుకు నేను తాగుబోతాను. ఈ మైండ్ ఏమో ఆగదు, ఎప్పుడు రన్నింగే, వరుస పెట్టి రన్నింగ్ లో ఉంటది, రన్నింగ్ మోడ్ లో. సో ఈ ఈ మైండ్ అలా ఉంటది కాబట్టి ఎప్పుడు తాగుడు మళ్ళీ తీసుకుంటాను అని చెప్పుద్ది, ఈసారి పర్లేదు అని చెప్పుద్ది. తాగినప్పుడేమో కంట్రోల్. ఈ రెండాట్ల వల్ల నేను తాగుబోతాను. మా నాన్నగారేమో ఫైర్ ఫైటర్, మా అమ్మగారేమో బ్యాంకింగ్ లో పనిచేస్తారు, ఫైనాన్స్ లో. సో నాకు చాలా మంచి చైల్డ్హుడ్ ఉండింది. అదే చిన్నతనంలో బాగా ప్రేమతో పెరిగాను నేను. ఓ పెద్ద ఇల్లు ఉండింది, 6 అన్నదమ్ములు, ప్రేమ ఉండింది. అసలు నన్ను ఎవరు అంటే అబ్యూజ్ ఏం చేయలేదు. కాకపోతే త్రాగుడు నా జీవితాన్ని నాశనం కంప్లీట్ గా నాశనం చేసింది అని చెప్తాను. నేను ఈరోజు నా కథ అన్నాను, కానీ నేను షేర్ చేసేది ఏంటంటే నా అనుభవం, శక్తి, స్ఫూర్తి. ఎందుకంటే ఐడెంటిఫికేషన్ అంటే నాకు అలా జరిగింది, అన్న భావన మన ప్రోగ్రామ్ లో చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. త్రాగుబోతులు షేరింగ్ చేస్తుంటే నాకు అలా జరిగింది అన్న ఐడెంటిఫికేషన్, త్రాగుబోతులు కానీ మానక ద్రవ్యాలు తీసుకునే వాళ్ళు కానీ చేస్తుంటే ఆ ఐడెంటిఫికేషన్ అన్నది చాలా ముఖ్యమైనది. అందుకనే నేను ఈరోజు నా కథ నేను శక్తి స్ఫూర్తి పంచేలాగా ప్రయత్నిస్తాను అని చెప్తున్నాను. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్ డానీ.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the feelings that I had as a child, and growing up to be a young adult. So as of right now, I'm 38 years old. I got sober when I was 29. My sobriety date is April 15th, 2015. I'm coming up on 10 years sober. And I always like to explain my journey in recovery like this. I went to my first meeting when I was around 19, 20 years old. So for 10 years, getting sober was the hardest thing that I ever tried to do. For the last 10 years, getting sober was the simplest thing that I've ever done. And I don't want you to confuse simplest and easiest, right? It wasn't easy, but it was simple. So from 19 to 29, I didn't follow directions. I thought I was smarter than everybody. I thought that I knew everything. I didn't share. I didn't partake in AA. I would go to meetings. I would go to rehab, but I wasn't all the way in. For the last 10 years of my life, I listened. I followed directions. I treated Alcoholics Anonymous like it was the military in regards to I don't know, you know, please tell me. And I followed directions. There was no more fight left in me. I realized that I don't know anything, that my brain is like the first page of the big book, which is absolutely clean slate. I have to pretend like I know nothing. One of my favorite sayings is that the beginner always knows more than the expert, meaning that an expert's mind is full. They know everything already. A beginner has an open, clean slate, right? They could take in any new information. And when I say that the last 10 years getting sober was the simplest thing I ever did, I truly, really mean that. I just listened and I followed directions. White flag, I gave up. I know nothing. Please tell me what to do. I look at Alcoholics Anonymous like it's a grown-up game of follow the leader. Over here, when you're young, you used to play this game, right? Follow the leader, where you chase them around and do whatever they do. Alcoholics Anonymous is very simple. It's a grown-up game of follow the leader, meaning there's people that came in here before me, and I listened to them, and I followed them. I'll let you translate.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. సో ఏంటంటే నేను ఏప్రిల్ 2015లో నేను ఆల్కహాలిక్స్కి వచ్చానండి. ఏప్రిల్ 19, 2015. అంటే వచ్చే సంవత్సరం నాకు 10 ఏళ్ళు అవుతాయి. నేను మొదటి 10 ఏళ్ళు తాగే రోజుల్లో ఏం చేశానంటే ఎవడ మాట ఏం లేదు, నా ఇష్టం వచ్చినట్టు చేశాను. రీహాబుల్కి వెళ్ళాను, ఏ మీటింగులకు వచ్చాను, ఏదో వచ్చామని తప్ప ఏం చేసేవాని కాదు. సో నన్ను ఒక దాంతో కాకపోతే ఈ 10 ఏళ్ళలో ఏంటంటే మాట వినటం మొదలు పెట్టాను, డైరెక్షన్ తీసుకోవటం మొదలు పెట్టాను. ముందు 10 ఏళ్ళలో ఏంటంటే చాలా కష్టంగా ఉండింది, అదే చాలా కన్ఫ్యూజ్డ్గా ఉండింది. ఇప్పుడు 10 ఏళ్ళలో సింపుల్గా ఉంటుంది, చాలా ఈజీ సోబ్రైటీ. అంటే ఐ మీన్ ఈజీ అనట్లేదు, ఆయన సింపుల్ కాకపోతే కష్టం. ఏంటంటే సింపుల్ అంటే జస్ట్ ఫాలో ద లీడర్ గుడ్డిగా. నేను ఫాలో ద లీడర్ అని ఒక గేమ్ ఆడుకునేవాళ్ళం చిన్నప్పుడు. దాంట్లో ఆయన లీడర్ ఏం చెప్తే మనం చెప్పి వెళ్ళాలన్నమాట. అలాగే ముందు వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు ఏం చెప్పారో, ముందు వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు ఏం చెప్పారో అది ఇంటూ వెళ్ళాను 10 ఏళ్ళు. నేను ఎప్పుడు కూడా కొత్త మెంబర్ కింద కూర్చుంటా. ఎందుకంటే ఎక్స్పర్ట్ అయ్యాను అనుకోండి, నా నిండా నాలెడ్జ్ ఉంటుంది, ఇంకా నాకు నేర్చుకోవడానికి ఏమి ఉండదు. అందుకని నేను ఎప్పుడు ఎక్స్పర్ట్ కాదు, ఎప్పుడు క్లీన్ స్లేటే. బిగ్ బుక్ మొదటి పేజ్ బ్లాంక్ గా ఉంటుంది, మీరు చూస్తే బిగ్ బుక్ లో మొదటి పేజ్ బ్లాంక్, ఏముండదు రాసి. ఆ, అలాగే నా మైండ్ కూడా బ్లాంక్ గా ఉండాలి ఏ రోజుకి ఆ రోజు అని చెప్తున్నారు. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్.
Okay, guys, when I was younger, leading into my teens and my early adult years, right? Um, I love the saying that life is lived forward but understood backwards, right? I didn't know any of this at the time, but as I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I started to learn this about myself, right? I had a very low self-esteem. I hated myself. I didn't like who I was. I was full of fear. I was dominated by the world around me. I really cared how you viewed me. I dressed how you wanted me to dress. I talked how you wanted me to talk. I was very easily influenced. Just really low self-esteem type stuff. I didn't like the person that I was. I wish that I was somebody else. These were all thoughts that constantly went through my mind. I always was a liar. I could never tell. I was too scared to tell the truth, right? I was just way too scared to tell the truth. Everything I said was a lie. I embellished everything. Let's just use as an example. If you asked me how much money I made, I doubled it, to make myself look better. There's a line in the doctor's opinion that I really like. It says, into life. That was me. I felt like I lived in a bubble. I wasn't part of the world, and the world was going on around me. I just didn't feel like I was part of it. I was very overwhelmed by life. I was one of those guys, like, I wouldn't open the mail. You know what I mean? I didn't want to pay bills. I didn't want to deal with real life. I didn't want to deal with reality. And that's why alcohol was my solution. When I found alcohol, it cured all of my life's problems. It made my fear go away. It made me tell the truth because I no longer cared how you viewed me. It made it easier for me to open up, easier for me to talk, easier for me to deal with reality. And the way that I dealt with reality was I just escaped. I escaped through alcohol. The world and its problems no longer existed. Alcohol really worked for me from a young age, meaning that I had all of these problems like low self-esteem and fear and, dishonesty, all those different character defects and shortcomings that we talk about, right? I had all of those things and they disappeared with alcohol. And I always talk about this. Alcohol was my solution until it became my problem. In my late teens and my early 20s, alcohol really worked for me. It was, like I said, it was my solution, but then it started to turn. It started to turn where, starting in my early 20s, I was forced by my parents. Alcoholism runs rampant throughout both sides of my family. Alcoholism is on my mom's side, it's on my dad's side. And what I mean by that is, like, I really have that body problem to where when I have one, I need two. I can't stop. I just can't stop. And that's when alcohol really became a problem for me. And in my early 20s, I started to go to a lot of treatment centers, rehab facilities, counseling, jail, thrown out of my house. These are just all the different consequences that took place in my life. I became homeless for a couple of years. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't keep any relationship. So alcohol really started to destroy my life, right? But as I come to realize, like I talked about all those problems at the beginning, the low self-esteem, the fear, the dishonesty, I don't have an alcohol problem. I have a me problem. I am the problem. I've come to realize that in sobriety and recovery. And it's not like I came to realize that. It was told to me. It was taught to me. Alcohol only becomes my problem after I put it in my system. Before that, I am 100% the problem. Any bad situation that's ever happened to me in my life, I've had my fingerprints all over it. I caused it. I have to take 100% responsibility for that in order for me to recover. I love the saying, victims don't recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. meaning I can't play that victim role. I have to take 100% responsibility for the fact that I caused these problems. I went to a treatment center once for 90 days. Alcohol was removed from the equation. I made the decision to go back to it. So I don't have an alcohol problem. I have a me problem. And by coming into Alcoholics Anonymous and going through the 12 steps and all this stuff that we know about, I was able to change to where I no longer have a me problem. Or I mean, I still have the problem. I just know now I know how to react to it. I'll let you translate.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. సో మా తల్లిదండ్రులేపు రెండేపులా నాకు ఏంటంటే ఈ జబ్బు ఉంది, త్రాగుబోతాను అన్న జబ్బు. దానివల్ల ఏమవుతుందంటే నాకు ఎలర్జీ వస్తుంది. ఏంటంటే ఒకటి తాగగానే ఇంకా కావాలి అన్న బాడీ వస్తుంది నాకు. కాకపోతే దాంతో పాటు నాకు ఒక బుర్ర కూడా ఉంది. ఎప్పుడు చిన్నప్పుడు ఎప్పుడు లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్ అంటే అదే బేసిక్గా సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్ తెలుగులో కొంచెం వర్డ్ మర్చిపోయాను. కాకపోతే ఏంటంటే లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్తో బాధపడుతూ ఉండేవాడిని. అది కాకుండా ఏంటి భయాలు, అబద్ధాలు చెప్పటం, ఈ డిఫెక్ట్లు అన్నీ ఎలాగో ఉండేవి నాకు. మొత్తం అన్ని డిఫెక్ట్లు. కాకపోతే ఎక్కడ అంత కలవలేకపోవటం, ఎప్పుడు కూడా ఈ లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్ బాగా బాధ పెడుతూ ఉండేది నాకు. అంటే నా గురించి నేను తక్కువగా అనుకోవటం అన్నమాట లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్. సో ఈ బాధతోటే అంటే నేను తాగుడు నాకు ఒక పరిష్కారం కింద అనిపించింది మొదట్లో. ఎందుకంటే తాగితే ఎన్ని మాయమైపోయాయి. కాకపోతే ఆ పరిష్కారం కాస్త కొన్ని రోజుల తర్వాత అదే ప్రాబ్లం కింద అయ్యారు. అయితే ఆల్కహాలిక్స్ అనానమస్ లోకి వచ్చాక ఏం తెలుసుకున్నానంటే మందు కాదు ప్రాబ్లము, నేను ప్రాబ్లం. నేను అన్నది ప్రాబ్లం. నాకు ఏంటంటే ఎన్నో కౌన్సిలింగ్లకి వెళ్ళాను, ఎన్నో థెరపీలకు వెళ్ళాను, రీహాబ్లకి వెళ్ళాను, ఇంట్లోంచి బయటికి తోసేయబడ్డాను, 2 ఏళ్ళు ఇంట్లో అదే వీధుల్లో బతికాను. సో ఇవన్నీ కూడా చేశా. కాకపోతే ఆల్కహాల్ మటుకు ఆపలేదు. ఏలోకి వచ్చాక ఏం చెప్పారంటే, అరే బాబు ప్రాబ్లం నువ్వు, ఆల్కహాల్ కాదు. ఎందుకంటే 90 రోజులు రీహాబ్ లో ఉన్నాను. దాని తర్వాత వెళ్ళి మళ్ళీ తాగాను. ఎవరు తాగారు? నోట్లో ఎవరు పెట్టుకున్నారు? నేను. సో ఆ ప్రాబ్లం నేను అనమాట. ఏలో అంటారు ఏంటంటే నువ్వు విక్టిమ్ గా, అంతే విక్టిమ్ అంటే అయ్యో నాకు ఇలా జరిగింది, అయ్యో నాకు ఇలా జరుగుతుంది అనుకున్న వాళ్ళు ఎప్పుడు రికవర్ అవ్వలేరు సరిగ్గా అని చెప్పి విక్టిమ్ కార్డు ప్లే చేస్తారు. ఎందుకంటే నేను రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ తీసుకోవాలి నాకు జరిగిన చెడుకంతా. ఎవరు ఏంటంటే ఎవరు చెడు, అదే బేసిక్గా నేను నా జీవితంలో చూసుకుంటే నాకు జరిగిన చెడు అన్నిట్ల మీద నా ఫింగర్ ప్రింట్లు ఉంటాయి. నేనే చేసుకున్నాను అవన్నీ. నేను బాల్ రోలింగ్ పెడతాను, అవి జరుగుతాయి. సో నా బాధ్యత తీసుకోవాలి వాటికి, నేను చేసిన తప్పులకి. అంతే తప్ప అయ్యో ఎలా జరిగింది అలా జరిగింది అనుకోకూడదు. సో ఆల్కహాలిక్స్ అనానమస్ గా ముఖ్యంగా నాకు చెప్పింది ఏంటంటే బాబు ప్రాబ్లం నువ్వు, ఆల్కహాల్ కాదు అని చెప్పారు. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్.
Okay. One of the things that I left out too when I was talking about my shortcomings and my defects, right? It says it in the big book that selfishness and self-centeredness is the main root of our troubles. When I sat down with my sponsor, when I got out of rehab for the last time, and I sat down with my sponsor, he brought me right to that page in the big book. It's either 62 or 64. And he brought me right to that page and he showed me that line. And I'm someone that doesn't really consider myself, at the time, I didn't consider myself to be selfish, meaning that when you asked me for help, I would be available to help. That's what I thought that they meant by selfish. What I didn't realize was that I am all that I think about. Like I had mentioned in the beginning, I have a brain that doesn't shut off. It's a form of torture. Most alcoholics have it. where my brain doesn't shut off. I'm just always thinking. And I'm never thinking in a positive way, right? I'm always thinking negative stuff about myself, but I'm always thinking about me. So selfishness and self-centeredness is really the main part of my problem, because all I'm thinking about is me, and I know how to turn off my thinking by drinking. I know that when I drink, it's going to turn my mind off, and I'm not going to be thinking about myself anymore. So the selfishness and self-centeredness was very prevalent in my life in regards to all I thought about was me. And when you look at drinking, right, it's a very selfish thing to begin with. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it so I could feel better. I'm doing it so I could turn my thoughts off. I do it so I could escape life. I do it so I don't have to deal with reality. I do it so my life gets broiled down to this small little thing where all I care about is the next one. Every single sentence that I just said starts with I. All I care about is me. And that was a huge part of my problem leading up to me going into Alcoholics Anonymous. Also, a big part of me getting sober was realizing the severity of my problem. I have to realize the severity of my problem, meaning how powerful alcoholism is. I've never dealt with something more powerful in my life. It completely destroyed my life on 5 or 6 different occasions where I would get sober and then it would destroy my life again. Alcoholism is by far the most powerful thing I've ever encountered in my whole entire life in regards to something that just took over my life and destroyed it. And in order for me to get sober, I have to realize the severity of my problem. Right? The only way that I'm going to stop drinking is when I come to the conclusion that I'm never going to be able to stop drinking. I know that sounds a little oxymoronic, but that's what it is. The only way that I'm going to be able to stop drinking is when I come to the realization that I can never stop drinking. Right? And that's my step 1 experience, realizing the severity of my problem. I'll give you guys a story really quick. I have a cousin. Me and him were born a month apart. We were the
Let me
same age.
translate here and
Okay, perfect.
సో ఏంటంటే ఈయన ఈయన స్పాన్సర్ ఏం చెప్పాడంటే ఒక లైన్ చదివించాడు, స్వార్థము స్వార్థ చింతన మాత్రాలు. నేనేమనుకునేవానంటే ఎవరికైనా సహాయం కావాలంటే ఉంటాను, సో నేను స్వార్థం ఏంటి అనుకునేవాను వేలో ఉన్నప్పుడు కూడా. ఎవరైనా ఇప్పుడు మీరు సహాయం అడుగుతారు అనుకో, నేను చేస్తా, సో నాకు స్వార్థం ఎలా ఉంది అనుకునేవాడిని. కాకపోతే ఏంటంటే ఎప్పుడు నా గురించి ఆలోచిస్తూ ఉంటాను. ఎప్పుడు నాలోనే నాకు ఒక మైండ్ ఉంది. చాలా మంది ఆల్కహాలిక్స్ కి మైండ్ ఉంటుంది, ఈ మైండ్ ఆగదు. థాట్స్ నడుస్తూనే ఉంటాయి, ఎందుకంటే అది నా గురించి ఆలోచిస్తూ ఉంటది. నాలో అంటూ ఉంటది మైండ్. అది నా ప్రాబ్లం అని నాకు తెలియలేదు. సో అసలు మామూలుగా కూడా తాగుడు ఎందుకు తాగుతారు మీరు? ఆ మైండ్ ఆపడానికి తాగుతారు. నా మైండ్ నాకు బాగుండాలని తాగుతా, నా ప్రాబ్లమ్ నేను మర్చిపోవాలని తాగుతా, నా సంతోషం కోసం తాగుతా. అక్కడ కూడా నా వచ్చింది. అందుకనే తాగుడు కూడా చాలా స్వార్థపూరితమైన చర్య. సో ఈ ఈ అదే బేసిక్ గా ఏంటంటే ఈ స్వార్థ చింతన మెయిన్ ప్రాబ్లం అని చెప్తున్నారు. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్ విత్ ది స్టోరీ.
Okay, so I'm going to just tell this story because for me it's a really good step 1 story in regards to it shows you how powerful alcoholism and addiction are. I have a cousin, like I was saying, we're born a month apart. We were the same age. We lived in the same neighborhood. We did everything together, right? I'm just kind of setting the story here. We did everything together. And we both had alcoholism. We both went to meetings together when we were very young. Both of our parents were very involved in trying to get us help. So we shared that common bond, so to speak, right? When my cousin was in his late 20s, he had went to London, and directly due to his drinking, he had a seizure. And when he had a seizure, he fell and he hit his head, and he had a cerebral brain hemorrhage where he was in a coma for a couple of months. He woke up out of the coma. He had to be flown back. So he was in a coma for a couple of months. He woke up and he had to relearn everything. He had to relearn his name. He had to relearn how to walk, how to talk. It was literally like he was a baby, and he had to be retaught everything at the age of 30. So like I said, he was in a coma for a couple of months. He was in the ICU for a couple of months after that. Then he spent another year in a rehab facility that taught him all this stuff, how to walk, talk, taught him all that stuff again. Eventually, he gets himself back to a point in life where he could live basically unassisted. He has some issues in regards to he doesn't have balance. He has to walk slow. He has to use a cane. His hearing has been affected. His speech has been affected, but he could basically live on his own. And he wasn't drinking for a couple of years. It was a big thing, right? His parents were all over him. They weren't letting him drink. I met my wife in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, no, I'm sorry. I knew my wife my whole life, but we re-met again in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we end up getting married. My cousin hasn't drank for about 4 or 5 years. He's in my wedding party. He comes to the wedding. He drinks at the wedding. He hasn't drank in a couple of years. Remember, I said he had alcohol problems in the past. He doesn't just have 1 or 2 at the wedding. He gets absolutely, just as drunk as somebody could get and has to be carried out of the wedding. He keeps drinking from there. One morning, it was a Monday morning. I remember I had taken off from work, and I was supposed to go to the beach with my wife and my newborn son. And I get a call from one of his coworkers that he didn't show up to work. He lives about 2 minutes from me. I drive over to his house, and there he was. Direct result of alcoholism. Why do I bring up this story? He forgot everything. He forgot his name. He forgot how to walk. He forgot how to talk. He forgot how to write. He had to be taught everything. The only thing that didn't leave him was alcoholism. It was right there waiting for him. Once he had 1 drink, he could not stop till he had passed away. And that, to me, shows you how powerful the thing that he didn't lose. It was the one thing that stayed with him through that whole story. His dad's life will never be the same. His dad's completely destroyed. His mom's life will never be the same. His mom's completely destroyed. His sister's lives, they're just completely destroyed. So the ripple effect through his alcoholism has forever altered the lives of many people around him. And it just goes to show you how powerful it is, how powerful alcoholism is. The thing that we are up against is the most powerful thing in the world. It could destroy my life. It could end my life. So I have to treat it as such. I have to be very serious about my sobriety and my recovery. I have to treat it like it's the most important thing in the whole world, because it is. And I have to look at it as it at all times in my life has to be my #1 priority. I have to be in the middle of recovery. I can't be on the outside. It's got to be the main thing in my life at all times. I've accepted the fact that I have alcoholism. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I'm going to be a man. I'm going to face it, and I'm going to come into Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to go through the 12 steps, and I'm going to stay in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. The severity of alcoholism has taught me to treat my recovery just as serious. It has to be the most important thing in my life. All right, I'll let you go from here.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. సో త్రాగుబోతాను అంటే మామూలుగా ఆ, నేను త్రాగుబోతాను ఒప్పుకున్నా మళ్ళీ నేను త్రాగుతా. ఆ, ఏంటంటే ఇది ఒక్కటే ఏంటంటే కంప్లీట్ గా నేను తాగుబోతాను, నేను తాగుడు వద్దు అనుకున్నా మళ్ళీ తాగుతాను. ఒక కథ చెప్పారు ఆయన. ఆ కథలో ఏం చెప్పారంటే ఈయన కజిన్ ఉండేవారు, ఇలాగ ఆయన త్రాగుబోతే ఇద్దరు కలిపి తాగేవారు. దాని తర్వాత ఏ మీటింగ్లు కూడా అటెండ్ అయ్యేవారు. ఆ, సుమారుగా 37 సంవత్సరానికి ఆయనకి కోమాలోకి వెళ్ళాడు యాక్సిడెంట్ వల్ల. కోమా నుంచి బయటకు వచ్చాక ఎన్ని నేర్చుకోవాల్సి వచ్చింది ఆయన. ఆఖరికి తినటం నుంచి, నడవటం నుంచి, మా భాష నుంచి ఎన్ని నేర్చుకోవాల్సి వచ్చింది. మాట్లాడటం నుంచి, వినటం నుంచి ఎవ్రీథింగ్ నేర్చుకోవాల్సి వచ్చింది. సుమారుగా సంవత్సరం పాటు ఇవన్నీ నేర్పించే రీహాబిలిటేషన్ సెంటర్లో కూడా ఉన్నాడు ఆయన. దాని తర్వాత 3-4 ఏళ్ళు తాగలేదు. మా ఆవిడ నాకు చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి మాకు పరిచయం ఉంది. గత ఆల్కహాలిక్స్ అనానమస్ లో మేము ఇద్దరం పెళ్లి చేసుకున్నాం. మా పెళ్లి పార్టీలో ఆయన తాగాడు. ఎలా తాగాడంటే ఆ ఇంకా ఆయన్ని బయటికి మోసుకెళ్లాల్సి వచ్చింది. ఆయన ఎన్ని మర్చిపోయాడు. కాకపోతే త్రాగుబోతనం ఎక్కడికి పోదు, అక్కడే ఉంది వెయిటింగ్. ఎన్ని నేర్చుకోవాల్సి వచ్చింది, ఎన్ని మర్చిపోయి. కాకపోతే త్రాగుబోతనం మటుకు ఎక్కడికి పోలే, అక్కడే ఉంది. ఎందుకు చెప్తున్నానంటే ఇది చాలా సీరియస్ డిజీజ్. ఆయన కూడా సోబర్ గా ఉండి ఒక 5-6 సార్లు నాకు జీవితంలో చాలా నరకం చూపించింది తాగడం. సోబర్ గా ఉండి మళ్ళీ తాగి నరకం చూపించింది. ఇది ఎంత సీరియస్ డిజీజ్ అంటే మనం చాలా పెద్ద సీరియస్ డిజీజ్ తో పోట్లాడుతున్నామని మనం నిత్యం గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాలి. నంబర్ 1 ప్రయారిటీ ఉండాలి రికవరీ. ఇవన్నీ తెలుసుకున్నాక నేను ఏం చేస్తాను, ఆ, ఒక అదే దీంతో పోరాడుతానా, లేకపోతే అయ్యో నాకు తాగుబోతాను ఉంది అనుకుంటాను. పోరాడడానికి నేను ఏం చెయ్యాలి అని చెప్తుంది. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్.
Okay, so now I know the severity of my problem. I realize the severity of my problem. Like I said, I had been to multiple treatment centers. I had been homeless. I had been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous for years, but never took it serious. Um, and at the beginning, I said identification was going to be my topic, along with me just telling my story. But I want to talk a little bit about how identification has helped me in my recovery. If you're anything like me, I thought that I was a very unique person, right? I thought that I was the only one that thought how I thought, felt how I felt, went through what I went through. I was very poor me, like, oh, poor me, this problem that I have. Nobody understands me. Nobody gets me. Therapy doesn't work for me. AA doesn't work for me. Nothing works for me, right? And when I went to treatment, I was in there with 73 other guys. And I soon came to realize that I wasn't unique. I wasn't as unique as I thought that I was. There was 73 other people in there who were going through what I went through, who felt what I felt, who lived how I lived. They had the same problems as me, like the low self-esteem, the fear, the dishonesty, the selfishness. They had the same problems with me as they didn't like to open up. They didn't like to talk. They didn't like to follow directions. They didn't like to listen. They had egos just like I had an ego, refused to follow directions. So while I was in this treatment center, I realized I'm not as unique as I thought I was. I started to identify with the other people in there. And then one of the other things that I really realized, like I really was an eye-opening moment for me, was when I was in this treatment center, they would bring in outside speakers to come in and tell their stories. And you could tell right when these guys walked in the door, they had this glow to them. They had this peace of mind that I craved my whole entire life. Like I said earlier, my mind never shut off. My mind always kept going. I wanted what these guys had. These guys who came in and told their stories, I wanted their peace of mind. I wanted their recovery. I identified with what they said. Everything that they did, everything that they said, I felt it. I identified with it. I wanted what they had. And through identification, it became very clear to me that all I have to do for the first time in my life is listen and follow directions. I don't know anything. You guys know. So I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to do whatever I'm told. I found a sponsor. I identified with him. I did whatever I was told. The last time I went to treatment, my mother said something to me before I got in the car that I'll always remember. She said, Daniel, please, for the next year, let someone else make decisions for you. You are horrible at making decisions. Please just listen to someone else and let them make decisions. I did just that. For the next year, I lived in a sober living facility and I just listened and followed directions. I made AA my whole life. I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous and I got a sponsor and I got a great support group. You are only as good as the guy that's standing next to you. I stuck with the winners and I listened and I followed directions like my life depended on it. I shared like my life depended on it. I no longer cared what other people thought of me because I just wanted to get that peace of mind. And I just surrounded myself in Alcoholics Anonymous. I identified with the people around me and I listened and followed directions. And which was once the hardest thing in my whole entire life, getting sober, then became the simplest thing in my whole entire life. I just listened and followed directions. There's a line that I love, right? When you're inside the bottle, you can't see the directions because they're on the outside. I love that line because I'm not going to fix the problem I got myself into, but somebody else can that's been through it. So let me listen to them. All right, Karthik, I don't know. I'll let you translate, but I don't know if that was, if.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. సో ఇప్పుడు ఏంటంటే ఫస్ట్ నేను ఏమనుకునేవాడినంటే నేనే అయ్యో ఇప్పుడు నాదే ఎలా ఉందేమో బుర్ర అసలు ఆగదు కదా బుర్ర ఆలోచనలు వస్తూనే ఉంటాయి నేనే ఎలా ఉన్నానేమో తాగుడు అని అనుకుంటే కదా రీహాబ్కి వెళ్తే నాలాంటి వాళ్ళే ఒక 80 మంది ఉన్నారు వాళ్ళకి ఏ ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటి లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్ అదే స్వయం గౌరవం తక్కువగా ఉంటుంది సో అబద్ధాలు భయాలు ఏ డిఫెక్ట్లతో ఉన్నారు వాళ్ళు కూడా ఏం చేస్తున్నారు ఎవడ మాట వినరు సొంతంగా నడుపుకోవడానికి ప్రయత్నిస్తూ ఉంటారు కాకపోతే బయట నుంచి ఏ మెంబర్స్ వచ్చారు వాళ్ళల్లో నాకు పీసు కాము కనిపించేది సో వాళ్ళేంటి వాళ్ళకు ఉన్నది నాకు కావాలి సో నేను డైరెక్షన్స్ తీసుకోవటం మొదలుపెట్టాను ఇంకా నాకు గుర్తుంది మా అమ్మగారు నన్ను రీహాబ్ లో లాస్ట్ టైం నన్ను దింపుతున్నప్పుడు అరే బాబు నువ్వు ఒక్క పని చేయరా ఒక సంవత్సరం దాకా నువ్వు అసలు డెసిషన్స్ తీసుకోకు ఏ డెసిషన్ చూడలేదు చాలా వర్స్ట్ గా తయారవుతుంది ఒక సంవత్సరం దాకా అసలు నువ్వు డెసిషన్సే తీసుకోకు అని అన్నారు నేను అదే చేశాను ఒక సంవత్సరం పాటు సోబర్ లివింగ్ లో ఉన్నా అంటే అక్కడ ఎవరు తాగరండి అక్కడ బతకచ్చు సో ఒక స్పాన్సర్ని తీసుకుని ఒక సపోర్ట్ గ్రూప్ తీసుకుని స్టిక్ టు ద విన్నర్స్ అన్నారు విన్నర్స్ తో తిరిగా సో గుడ్డిగా వాళ్ళు చెప్పింది చేసుకుంటే డెసిషన్స్ నేను తీసుకోకుండా గుడ్డిగా వాళ్ళు చెప్పింది చేసుకుంటే అంతే చేశాను స్టార్టింగ్ లో ఆ డైరెక్షన్స్ తీసుకోవటం ఇంత ముందు లేదు ఇప్పుడు మొదలు పెట్టాను ఆల్కహాలిక్స్ అనానిమస్ లో అని చెప్తున్నారు ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్
Karthik, that's what I was asking. How much longer do you want me to speak for? Do you want me to wrap it up there?
No, you can go for 20 more minutes if you want.
All right, perfect. Okay, so like I had said, identification is what got me into the identification is what I call the beginning of my recovery. Meaning that when I was in this treatment center, I saw these people come in and I wanted what they had. You know what I mean? I really wanted what they had and never shut off. I wanted their peace of mind. I saw these people come in and I really wanted to, for the first time in my life, be okay with myself. That's why I drink. I was never okay with myself. Right? If I look at steps 1, 2, and 3, right? I'll do a quick breakdown of 1, 2, and 3. My step 1 is what I had just been explaining for the last half hour. My step 1 is my story. My experience shows me that I can't drink safely. They say Alcoholics Anonymous first open meeting was Bill's story in the big book, right? So my step 1 is my experience shows me that I can't drink safely. I have a body that needs, after I have 1, it needs 2, and I have a mind that tells me that I don't have a problem. Right? I have a disease that tells me that I don't have a disease. It's very hard to get help when you think that you don't have a problem. And my step 1 is realizing the severity of my problem. And my step 1, right, my life is unmanageable. That is, I am the problem. Me coming to the realization that I am the problem and that I have to change through the help of others. What's my step 2 experience? My whole life, I was very closed-minded. I thought that I knew everything. I didn't want advice from anybody else. I thought that I had it all figured out. Even while I was homeless, I still thought that I had it all figured out. I couldn't be told anything. So I had to change my thinking in regards to have an open mind. I had to have an open mind that anything could work for me. I had to do the opposite of everything that I thought, right? My sponsor was very big on this. My first thought is always wrong. My second thought is a learned behavior that I learned from you guys in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to be able to go with the second thought over the first thought, not react to the first thought, right? God is in the pause. I have to have my first thought. I can't control my thoughts. My first thought comes to my mind. I have to not react. God is in the pause and go with the second thought, which is a learned behavior from you guys. So that's my second step experience, which is just keeping an open mind. And my third step experience is keep moving forward with the rest of this program, meaning that when I get to the third step, I turn my will and my life over to the power of God. I have to start writing 4 immediately. There's danger in delay. So that's my third step, is to keep moving forward with the rest of the program. Don't delay. Don't sit there. Don't wait for, hope is not a game plan. The second that I'm done with 3, I have to start writing 4. So that's my little breakdown of 1, 2, and 3. Karthik, I'll let you translate.
సో మొదటి సోపానం, రెండో సోపానం, మూడో సోపానం గురించి చెప్పారండి. మొదటి సోపానం ఇందాక అరగంట నుంచి మాట్లాడింది నా మొదటి సోపానం, నా అనుభవం. నేను ఫస్ట్ తెలుసుకోవాలి తాగుడు నాకు పని చేయదు అని చెప్పి. దాని ముందు నేను శక్తి అని చెప్పి. నాకు ఏంటంటే పూర్తిగా అదే తెల్ల జెండా ఓపాలి, సరెండర్. రెండో సోపానం ఏంటంటే ఓపెన్ మైండ్. ఎన్ని రోజులు నేను ఏమనుకున్నానంటే, నేను అన్ని చేస్తాను, నేను అంతా ఫిగర్డ్ అవుట్, నాకు తెలిసి ఏం చేయాలి. నేను ఆఖరికి ఇల్లు వాకిలి లేకుండా రోడ్డు మీద ఉన్నప్పుడు కూడా నేను అదే అనుకునేది ఏంటంటే, నాకు తెలుసు నా జీవితం ఎలా నడుపుకోవాలి. తీరా చూస్తే ఇల్లు వాకిలి కూడా లేదు, రోడ్డు మీద బతుకుతున్నా. సో రెండో సోపానం మెయిన్ గా మా స్పాన్సర్ అదే చెప్పాడు, ఏంటంటే ఓపెన్ మైండ్. ఇంకోటి, నీ మొదటి థాట్ ఎప్పుడు కూడా తప్పు థాట్ వచ్చేది, నీ రియాక్షన్ థాట్. నీ థాట్ల మీద నీకు కంట్రోల్ ఉండదు, అంటే నీ ఆలోచనల మీద. మొదటి ఆలోచన తప్పు, దేవుడు ఆ ఆ పాజ్ లో ఉంటాడు, ఆగటంలో ఉంటాడు దేవుడు. సో ఆగి రెండో ఆలోచన మీరందరూ నాకు నేర్పించింది ఏం చేయాలి. ఆ ముఖ్యంగా ఏంటంటే ఏదైనా నాకు పని చేయొచ్చు, ఆ ఓపెన్ మైండ్ పెట్టుకోవటమే రెండో సోపానం. ఇంతకుముందు నా ఆలోచనే నాకు పని చేస్తుంది అనుకున్నాను, అప్పుడు ఏదన్నా పని చేయొచ్చు. మూడో సోపానం ఏంటంటే మిగతా ప్రోగ్రామ్ చేయటం. ఆ ఎందుకంటే డేంజర్ ఉంటుంది డిలే చేస్తే, ఆ డేంజర్ లేకుండా మిగతా ప్రోగ్రామ్ చేయటమే మూడో సోపానం. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్.
Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm really just going, I told you guys my story would lead up to this point. So now I'm just going through my recovery process, what that has looked like, what it continues to be today, right? And my experience with the steps which saved my life. So in steps 4, 5, and 6, right? Step 4, I've been to I've been to a lot of different treatment centers, right? So when you go, rehabs, when you go to these places, they point out to you all of your problems, right? All of your shortcomings, your character defects, what makes you tick. You know what I mean? You do a lot of work with counselors there, so you learn a lot about yourself, right? So as I'm going through 4 and 5 with my sponsor, I'm not really learning anything new, but what I'm doing is facing this stuff for the first time. When it comes to resentments, there's no such thing as a resentment that's too small, right? I put down every resentment that I possibly could think of, and I really came to realize that I was just dominated by the people around me. I cared so much about what they thought of me. A lot of resentments were made up in my own mind. I created them. They didn't even exist in real life. When it came to my fears, I had so much fear in my life. I was dominated by fear. I was so petrified by what other people thought of me. You know what I mean? And then when it comes to sex conduct, how a male should behave, I had very wrong ideas of how I thought that a man should behave. I thought that a man should behave like they don't complain and they don't share. And that, by very definition, almost killed me because I kept everything in my whole entire life. And it created all this trauma because for my whole life, I was just having conversations with myself in my head and I wasn't sharing it with anybody. And the second I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and started taking it seriously and started sharing exactly what was going on in my head, I started to get some relief. I started to get feedback. Because I was telling people exactly what was going on with me, I was able to get feedback to those problems and I was able to get help. Because I finally was able to walk through the fear and talk through the fear and tell people what was going on with me. So my step 4 experience was really all that stuff that I talked about before, that low self-esteem, the selfishness, the dishonesty, all of that stuff I was really able to face for the first time in my life. And I was really able to get help. My sponsor was able to help me because I was telling him exactly what was going on with me. And then in step 5, for the first time in my life, like I told you guys, like I've been saying this whole time, I was very scared of being judged. I was very scared of what other people thought of me. So I had done 5th steps in the past where I left off the most important stuff because I was scared of being judged. Do you know how hard it is to stop drinking when you're holding on to the things that you hate most about yourself and not telling anyone? I held on to some of the stuff that I had did that kept me up at night. The stuff that made me hate me, I held on and didn't tell anyone. So when I finally told my sponsor everything that I had did in my life in my 5th step, all my exact wrongs, it was like it was a very freeing experience for me. I was finally able to let go. I was finally able to go to sleep at night knowing that I wasn't keeping anything to myself and that I had let it all out there and that I had told another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. And they were no longer my little secrets. My secrets will kill me. as long as I share them with somebody else and realize that I'm not that unique. I'm not as special as I thought that I was. It will be easier for me to move forward. And then when it comes to step 6, my character defects, right? So my character defects plague me on a daily basis. They just, you know what I mean? Like my selfishness, my dishonesty, my ego, my pride, me thinking that I know everything, me wanting to be right. You know what I mean? Me doing what I want to do. All that stuff plagues me on a daily basis, right? So my step 6, I was ready to have all of it removed, but my step 6 experience was really for me to just pray to a God of my understanding to have these defects removed. Where they really started to go down was when I got into the inventory process later on in my recovery, because then you become so aware of your defects and your shortcomings that they start to lessen. But when I went through 6 and 7 personally, I was just praying to a God of my understanding to have them removed. And that kind of got me into the whole prayer process and you know, coming to the realization that I have defects and I have shortcomings and accepting them and being okay that I'm going to make mistakes, that I am defective, that parts of me aren't good, right? Just accepting that and realizing that the goal is to lessen them as I go through life. So that's my 4, 5, 6, 7 experience. I'll let you translate.
సో 4వ సోపానం ఏంటంటే నేనేం నేర్చుకునేది ఏమి ఉండదు. నా నిజాన్ని నేను మొదటిసారి ఎదుర్కొంటా. నాకెప్పుడు ఏంటంటే ఇతరులు ఏమనుకుంటారు అన్న భయం ఒకటి ఉండేది. నన్ను జడ్జ్ చేస్తారేమో అని. ఈ నా మీద నాకు తక్కువ గౌరవం, లో సెల్ఫ్ ఎస్టీమ్, ఇవన్నీ ఉండేది. నేను చాలా 5th స్టెప్పులు చేశాను. గత చాలా సార్లు నేను చెప్పేవాడిని కాదు పూర్తిగా. అయితే మొదటిసారి మొత్తం అంతా ఎవరేమనుకుంటారో అని పక్కన పెట్టి మొత్తం అంతా నేను డార్కెస్ట్ సీక్రెట్లు కూడా మా స్పాన్సర్ కి నేను చెప్పినప్పుడు నాకు చాలా ఫ్రీగా ఉండింది, చాలా ఫ్రీడమ్ వచ్చింది. నాలుగో ఏ రిజైన్మెంట్ కూడా చిన్న రిజైన్మెంట్ కాదండి. ఏదైనా సరే, ఏదైనా మనం చూసుకోవాల్సింది. 6వ సోపానానికి వచ్చేసరికి 6, 7లో నాకు డిఫెక్ట్లు ఉన్నాయి. ఇక్కడ నేను ప్రార్థన మొదలు పెట్టా. అవి తీయమని నా ఓన్ దేవుడికి, నేను అర్థం చేసుకున్న దేవుడు. ప్రార్థన మొదలు పెట్టి ఆయన్ని తీయమని అడగాల. మెల్లిగా తగ్గుతూ వెళ్తాయి, అంతే, మాయమైపోవు. నాకు ఈ రోజు ఈ డిఫెక్ట్లతో కూడా నేను యాక్సెప్ట్ చేసి నన్ను నేను ఈ రోజు ఉండేలా ఉండాలి. అవును, నా దగ్గర డిఫెక్ట్లు ఉన్నాయి, నేను పర్ఫెక్ట్ కాదు, ఈ ఓన్లీ తగ్గుతూ వెళ్తాయి అని యాక్సెప్ట్ చేసేలా ఉండాలి నన్ను నేను అని చెప్తున్నాను. ప్లీజ్ గో హెడ్.
All right, so kind of picking up on my step 8 experience, right? Making a list. I was able to make a list of all people that I had harmed and then kind of bringing that into step 9. Step 9 was life-changing for me. Life-changing. For me, I'm one of those people in my whole entire, like for my whole life, I always tried to take the easy route. I never wanted to work for anything. I didn't have much integrity. You know what I mean? I was one of those guys I never went through the storm. I was always looking to go around. I wanted everything to be easy. I wanted nothing to be hard. If it was hard, I ran away from it. And the reason why I bring this up and I talk about integrity, that there was a lot of stealing involved in my story. I was someone that had no real moral integrity. I had no moral compass. And there's a lot of stealing involved in my story. So when it came to step 9, I had to pay a lot of money back to people. And my sponsor explained step 9 to me in a way that I really love, right? Because if you read it in the book, it says, we want to clean our side of the street so we could have this peace of mind to be able to walk down the street with a clear head, knowing that we had righted all of our wrongs, right? Step 9 has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the other person that was wronged. Me getting a peace of mind from it is a benefit, but that's not why we do it. it's a benefit that I get from doing it, but it's not why I do it. Why I did it, why I do it is because someone else was wronged and they need to be made right. That's it. I stole from somebody. That person needs to be made whole. It's about the person that I had wronged. It's not about me. So for the first time in my life, I'm facing something and I'm doing something for someone else to make right because I was wrong. So step 9 for me, and I paid a lot of money back to people, was a huge accomplishment in my life because for the first time, I really faced something. Step 9, I had to have very uncomfortable conversations with people, telling them about the wrongs that I had did, and I want to make it right. These conversations kept me up at night. These conversations gave me so much anxiety before I had them. I wasn't able to sleep. I was so scared to have them. I was thinking about them a lot. And then, from what my sponsor told me and what I experienced is that's the type of stuff that creates change in a positive way. Doing something that I have so much fear about creates change in a positive way. So being able to have those uncomfortable conversations that I wanted nothing to do with created change for me in a positive way. It gave me that integrity that I never had my whole life. And then in 10 and 11, I live by 10 and 11. I live my whole life. Alcoholics are undisciplined by nature. So I need discipline in my life. I need structure. I need routine. And inventory is a huge part of my routine. I do inventory every single day. And when I do my inventory, this is the great part about Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I came in 9.5 years ago. I still have a full page of inventory every single night. You know what I mean? None of this stuff, is like going away. I just know how to react to it better. I know how to deal with it better because you guys taught me. But inventory is a huge part of my life to where I could become, I used to lie. Every time I opened my mouth, it was a lie. Now I very rarely lie, but I will sometimes. If I'm full of fear, I'll lie. If I care about what you think about me, I'm going to lie. But I used to lie all the time. Now it's only a little bit. So that's positive change that happened through inventory because of that awareness and putting it down and sharing it with my sponsor, being held accountable. Right. And then when it comes to step 11 in meditation and prayer, I start my morning off every single morning with the 3rd, 7th, and 11th step prayers. And what I try and do is that open mind that I talked about in step 2, I try and keep that in step 11. Remain teachable. Just because I'm sober a little while doesn't mean that I know much. The second I start to think I know a thing or two, I'm in trouble. I need to remain teachable, remain open mind, willing to take direction from anybody, willing to learn from anybody. And then that brings me to step 12, to where, it's a requirement of me to make sure that I give back what was freely given to me. My sponsor demanded that of me. People took time out of their lives to help me. So then in turn, I have to do that for other people. And at the same time, it benefits me. If I'm helping someone else, I'm not thinking about myself. Less time thinking about me is a good thing. And then carrying these principles in all my affairs is something that I still work on a daily basis. I struggle with that. I'm best behaved in this 1.5-hour meeting. But I need to work on my behavior at work. I need to work on my behavior at home. Ask my wife how I'm doing. That's a good barometer of where I'm at in my recovery. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But that's my biggest goal, I would say, that I'm striving for right now, is to carry these principles in all my affairs. I'm looking to improve on that. And that's where I'm at right now. And that's my experience with 9, 10, 11, and 12. Kartish, I'll send it over to you to translate.
ఓకే. సో 9వ సోపానం ఈయన జీవితం పూర్తిగా మార్చేసింది. ఈయనకి ఎప్పుడు బాగా దొంగతనాలు ఎక్కువ ఈయన కథలో. ఎప్పుడు ఏంటంటే మంచి చెడు అన్నది ఏం లేదు. మొదటిసారి ఈయన ఫేస్ చేయాల్సి వచ్చింది. ఏంటంటే మొదటిసారి ఈయన వెళ్ళి మాట్లాడాలంటే భయాలు, నిద్రలేని రాత్రులు కూడా ఉంది. అప్పుడు చాలా స్పాన్సర్ అదే అన్నారు, అంత అలాగా నువ్వు ఇదవుతున్నావు అంటే నేను మారుస్తావు ఈఎంఐ. సో ఎంఎన్స్ లో మొదటిసారి అందరినీ కలిసి వాళ్ళకి డబ్బులు ఇవ్వటం, లేకపోతే తప్పులు చేసిన చోట వెళ్ళి క్షమాపణ అడగటం, ఇవన్నీ కూడా ఇన్ని బాగా మార్చింది. పదో సోపానం ముఖ్యంగా రోజంతా ఇన్వెంటరీ. ఈ రోజుకి కూడా నాకు ఫుల్ పేజ్ ఇన్వెంటరీ వస్తుంది, రాస్తాను. అవి అక్కడే ఉంది, అక్కడికి పోలేదు, చాలా డిఫెక్ట్. కాకపోతే అవి నేను మా స్పాన్సర్తో అకౌంటబుల్ ఉంది. ఆయన చెప్పింది ఆయన ఆయనతోటి నేను ఏం చేస్తున్నానని చెప్పి ముందుకు సాగుతూ ఉండదు. 11వ సోపానం వచ్చేసరికి ప్రార్థన. రోజు 3వ సోపానం ప్రార్థన, 7వ సోపానం ప్రార్థన, 11వ సోపానం ప్రార్థన చేస్తాను. ఆ ఓపెన్ మైండ్ ఉంచుకుంటాను. ఆ 2వ సోపానంలో ఉన్నదే ఎక్కడికి తీసుకొస్తాను. అంటే ఎవరేం చెప్పినా తోసిపుచ్చు, ఎవరైనా కానీ అందరి దగ్గర ఓపెన్ గా ఉంటాను సజెషన్స్. 12వ సోపానం మా స్పాన్సర్ డిమాండ్ చేశాడు, నీకు టైం స్పెండ్ చేశారు, నువ్వు కూడా ఇతరులకి పంచాలి, అది నా బాధ్యత, ఇతరులకి పంచడం. ఎన్ని వ్యవహారాల్లో ఇంకా నేను ఇబ్బంది పడుతున్నా ప్రోగ్రామ్ ప్రాక్టీస్ కూడా. ఎందుకంటే నేను ఇంకా పర్ఫెక్ట్ కాదు. కరెక్ట్ గా తెలియాలంటే మా ఆవిడని అడిగితే తెలుస్తుంది. అప్పుడప్పుడు గుడ్డుగా ఉంటుంది, అప్పుడప్పుడు బ్యాడ్గా ఉంటుంది. ఇప్పటికీ కూడా ఇది నా 10, 11, 12వ సోపానం ప్రాక్టీస్. 9, 10, 11 అని చెప్తున్నాను. ప్లీజ్ గో.
Karthik, I see that it's 12:44, 12:43. I just wanted to, my time at least. That was my experience with the 12 steps. So I wanted to wrap it up there. And really just thank you guys for letting me come on and asking me to speak and allowing me to be of service. And I wanted to make sure that I left some time at the end of the meeting for however you guys normally do things.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. సో టైం అయింది కాబట్టి ఇక్కడితో ముగిస్తున్నాను. ధన్యవాదాలు చెప్తూ ఈయన ముగిస్తున్నారండి. ఇక్కడితోటి ఆగి ప్రశ్నలు జవాబులకి ఓపెన్ చేద్దాం.